Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Heart, our English language programme here on Angelus TV. I'm Sister Mary, and my guest this afternoon is Sister Mary Ann Francalanza, who's also an FCJ sister, Faithful Companions of Jesus. Mary Ann studied maths and physics and taught for 17 years at FCJ College in Liverpool. Recently, she has trained in ecotheology in Canada and is about to take over as director of our FCJ house in London. So welcome, Mary Ann, and thank you for making time for us this afternoon.
Thank you very much. It's good to be with you.
I can see that you have your Laudato Si document behind you, and that is probably what connects us to this programme. But I'd mentioned on the introduction that you were a maths teacher, and I'd just like to quote this part of a poem that I use a lot and I like. And to one God says, "Come to me by numbers and figures. See my beauty in the angles between stars, in the equations of my kingdom. Bring your lenses to the worship of my dimensions, far out and far in. There is always more of me in proportion." So it has always fascinated me how God beckons to people in so many different ways. And I think I remember a conversation we once had where you and I both talked about infinity, the God of infinity. And I'm curious about how that love of maths, love of God through God's infinity, has led you to this point where you are now.
Yes, I've always really enjoyed mathematics, enjoyed the beauty of it, the neatness of it, the logic of it, I suppose. The way it describes the world in a neat way, and also then leaves space for what is unknown, for infinity, for what happens far beyond, or what happens when you dig really deep into something, and there's always more to explore and to find out. I used to say to the students when I was teaching mathematics that mathematics is the language that God speaks, that God used uh, this way to create the universe. And I love the idea of infinity, this idea of always more. And of course, in mathematics, there are some infinities that are bigger than other infinities. And I
Yeah.
suppose there's an image of God as the biggest of all infinities for me.
I'm attracted by what you say there about the neatness and the beauty in maths. Um, what about when you were teaching? How did that pan out as an instrument of God or in your own search for more, for that reaching out? Tell us about that career of 17 years, I think you said,
That's
as a
right,
teacher in
yes.
Liverpool.
In Liverpool. I loved teaching. I love being with young people, just to be with them at that kind of really key moment in their life when they are deciding what path to take, finding out about themselves, discovering more who they are. And I just really enjoyed that. And in a sense, you have such power, really, when you're with young people, not, and you can use it for bad or for good, right? So there's a real sense of responsibility to use it well, to really direct them in ways that they will flourish. But also being around young people keeps you young and keeps you asking questions, and not too not too set in your ways, because they will always challenge. They will always think of something new. So I really enjoyed it. And it was lovely for them to be able to speak to me. I was their mathematics teacher, but I was also a religious. I was also Sister Mary Ann. That's what they called me. So they could come and kind of talk to me about their faith questions, their life questions. And it was a real privilege to be there with them at that time.
Was there a question that particularly provoked you, challenged you, that one of the students came up with?
I think it was always questions about, when they start to dig deep about where is God, where is God in this difficult situation, or how does God allow this to happen? And these are questions that human beings have asked for, well, since human beings began. So it's it's always challenging to try and explain, and sometimes it's just better to say maybe there isn't a reason, maybe we don't know, and that's really hard for a young person to hear.
Yeah.
They're not so good about the gray of life. They always think a bit more in black and white. So it's teaching them about the gray.
Yes, teaching about the grey. And that leads me into this next stage of life that with eco-theology. I know I myself have been trying to go through a conversion experience in ecological concerns. I did my own retreat on that. But can you tell us a little bit about yours, from being in Malta, probably meat-eating family, to where you are now?
Yeah, so I was studying science at university, well, even secondary school. So I was kind of starting to be aware of the climate, what now we call a climate crisis, um, way back a long time ago. And I just became aware that we were using a lot of the Earth's resources, and that they weren't infinite, and that there was going to come a time when they were going to run out. And at the time when I was in secondary school, there was a big thing about acid rain, that we realized we were putting a lot of chemicals in the atmosphere that then were reacting with the water and clouds and coming down as acidic, and so corroding plants and animals. So there was this kind of terrible image of acid coming down from the sky. It was kind of frightening. But it was also the era of the ozone layer, when we realized that we were making a big hole in the ozone layer. And that was, in a sense, that was a real success story over many years of lots of countries coming together and acting to remove the chemical, the CFCs, the chlorofluorocarbons, from aerosols and things like that. So we now don't use them anymore, and that ozone layer is repairing itself slowly. So I became aware of the scientific part of it kind of quite early. And I was always very aware of not wasting, um, and only using what I need. But as I continued to grow, there was a growth in the sense of this was not just a resource for me to use, and I better take care of it, because if it runs out, I won't have it anymore. It was more like, this is a gift, that creation has a right to exist outside of me. It's not for me, but it's for itself. And that somehow, if God is creator, and that is one of the names we call God, then this is God's creation, and God loves it. So taking care of creation becomes part of worship, becomes part of faith, becomes part of loving God. Loving God is loving also what God loves, which includes creation, includes other human beings, includes myself. So there's this kind of slowly becoming more and more aware. And of course, as you become more and more aware, you realize that I realize that some of the things I do are not in line with this vision. Whether it is, the amount of stuff we have, things we accumulate. So about giving away and sharing and buying less, consuming less, trying to live with less. One of the ecological charities here in the UK has a lovely slogan called Joy in Enough. And our society tells us there is joy now at the moment at Christmas. The joy comes from buying the latest, whatever it is, toy, mobile phone, television. Whereas really, this realization of our link with creation and God invites us to have joy in enough.
No.
So I just love that. And another thing that I became aware of was our very destructive practices of you talked about meat eating, destructive ways that we are the way we're destroying the earth by our farming methods, how cruel they are to the creatures, which more and more science is realizing are sentient, have feelings and emotions, maybe not exactly the way humans, but like they feel pain, they feel attachment to their young. So the terrible cruelty, but also the way the earth is being ravaged, the antibiotics, the fertilizers. So I kind of, I'm trying to make choices that help that. So one of the choices is to be vegetarian. And I realized that being vegan would be even better for the earth. I'm not there yet. So the conversion continues.
Okay, thanks, Marianne. And I know you're just back from 2 years of studies, I think, in Canada. Just 1 year. Oh gosh, it seems like
Just
two
one,
years.
yes.
Seems like. And so this association with ecology, you're taking up a new role now in our FCJ Centre in London. From what you learned in Canada and from your Ignatian spirituality, what's going to drive that new vision? You talked about vision, how our vision has been gradually changing, and yours in particular. Is there something that's now propelling you as you move into this new role?
Yeah. I mean, it was a wonderful privilege to be a student again, having been a teacher for so long. So I really enjoyed my time studying. And, in a way that maybe I didn't do when I was first at university, when I was younger, I really took advantage of all that was available. Um, so just becoming aware of where theologians are in their thinking about the environment. Obviously, the Pope Francis encyclical Laudato Si has made a big impact and has got people thinking in different ways. But I was also reading theologians who aren't Catholic but come from the Christian tradition or the Buddhist tradition and other faith traditions, who are also thinking in this way. So, so one of the things is that ecology and caring for the earth, caring for our common home, as Pope Francis says, is something that links many people of faith or people of no faith in a desire to do something that is worthwhile and that is urgent. So one of the things that I'd love to do in our little centre here in London is to collaborate with lots of groups. We are also, especially as FCJ sisters, aware of young people, and I have taught young people for many years. So realizing that these ecological issues have a certain urgency and a link with young people that is maybe even bigger than with adults. So wanting to link with young people and enable them to do projects or work together with alongside us. Another focus for me, and this is very Ignatian, is justice. So ecological justice would be one of the focuses, and justice is about doing actions that create right relationships, that make the relationship right between people, with creatures, with the natural world. So I think ecological justice for me is a big thing. Obviously, faith and spirituality, reflecting about this, looking at the sources in our tradition, how many saints in their icons, for example, are always shown with an animal. Um, for example, Saint Hugh of Lincoln always has a swan. Saint Cuthbert of Durham, Saint Cuthbert always has a little otter. Julian of Norwich always has a cat. I quite like cats. So, of course, St. Francis of Assisi, you've got the wolf of Gubbio or the animals that he preached to. So there are resources in our tradition that speak to us of a connection with the earth that in the last few years since the Industrial Revolution, I suppose, we have lost. And how can we dig it back into our roots to create a more healthy relationship with our common home?
I think it's really important underlining that it's not just about ecology, but we're talking really about justice. But by touching into that, we also touch other areas. And because the centre is going to be in the centre of London, so to speak, between two major railway stations, a very urban area, it's going to speak volumes just by what it is presenting. I noticed that you've got the Laudato Si book there behind you, and about 3 years ago, I think it must be now, perhaps 21, in the Glasgow COP, you were singing Laudato Si at just the point after we were shown the marine life that has no voice but ours. So voice, it just strikes me now, is so important for you. You have a wonderful singing voice, which you contribute to our life in community, in the church. But the spoken voice, or the voice through poetry or words, is that diminishing after this latest COP, or do you find that it's still as loud?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and really the answer is I'm not sure, but I have a sense that more people are becoming aware of climate issues, more people who might have maybe ignored them before or thought they weren't really urgent, especially due to some of the disasters, hurricanes, floods, droughts that are becoming more kind of more common. So there are more people, and you do see little projects building up in the different parts of the world, people doing something locally. On the bigger stage, such as COP, the voices of those who want money and who want to continue the power of the status quo, and who benefit from the disaster or the uncertainty or the war, they are also getting louder. So it's how do we hold on to the hope that good will eventually triumph, that God is in fact there and God's Spirit is leading humanity to a place of flourishing. So I think you can focus on what didn't go well in the latest COP, for example. And, there are things that we would have wished would have come out and they haven't. But there's also small increments of positive actions, more just payment to the countries that are having the biggest effect from climate change and have done the least to cause it. So there are some good things happening. Whether that's happening a bit too slow, we are in an emergency, and it could be that it is too slow. But that's where we are, and I think focusing too much on the negative doesn't help anyone and doesn't encourage those who are doing to continue doing and to do more.
So the different kind of voices, the voices of the powerful, but the many, many other voices crying out for justice, crying out with their thirst.
Yeah, and I think there's a sense in which, this earth has got many, many, many species of creature, and the only creatures who have a voice at COP, for example, or any of these big decision-making bodies among governments are the human beings. So somehow, those of us who are aware need to speak for the bees and the elephants and the beetles and the fish and the dolphins. Who is speaking for them? And there are so many more of them than there are of us human beings, and yet we are the ones who are causing the destruction and have the power to at least stop the destruction, even though we might not be able to fix it. I have a sense that Earth has got enough resources to kind of flourish if we stop killing it.
Yeah. So that power to cry out, to call out what is unjust and to make a stance. as religious, we have the added advantage of being international, of being able to collaborate with others, of making our places available to others who seek a place to raise their voice. I'm thinking of Renate, the project against trafficking that united religious. And I see that you are constantly ready not just to use your voice, but to step out of your comfort zone. Again, justice, CAFOD. I think CAFOD is known here in Romanian because it has been very generous in supporting a number of projects, including the work that I'm involved in at JRS. But 10 years ago, I think you invited me to join you on a fun run, I think it was called, where we ran and we walked. And I still continue that. Every year on December the 27th, I run around Herresstraw Park trying to raise money for refugees. But I noticed you had to probably get into training to do something more than a fun run recently, where you featured at the
Yes.
iconic Silverstone track. Tell us a bit about that. And
Yes.
were you the force behind the other FCJs, or you managed to get a little group together? And we have some photos of that. Tell us a bit about that. Not just the voice, but the body. What was that like for you?
Yes, it was a bit of a crazy thing that I don't know what got it into my head, but I've always supported CAFOD because, the project that you've mentioned in Romania, and they have multiple projects around the world. And here in the UK, they do a lot of producing really good educational resources that I've used in school. To educate, to raise awareness about justice. And CAFOD are really a good example of a charity that has noticed that justice is a wider thing than just humans. So ecological justice is part of their justice ideas and the way they do it. So I really support them. So they were doing this 5K in Silverstone, which is a very famous racing track. Now, I really know nothing about racing cars, but I know I've heard of Silverstone. And so I decided that I was just coming back from Canada, and it would be a nice way to kind of come back to the UK and do something. But of course, I couldn't run 5K. I could do the fun run, as you said, of running a bit and walking a bit, but I couldn't run the whole 5K. So I set myself this challenge. And because those who know me, my family, my friends, know that this was a challenge for me, it really did help to raise money, because people did start to really give money for us to support, to sponsor us to do this run. And then a couple more FCJs got involved, and one of our companions in mission also. So there was a team of four of us, three FCJs, me from Malta, an FCJ from England, and an FCJ from Romania, all ran together, and a companion in mission also from England. And I managed to run the whole 5K without stopping for the whole lot. I was very proud, and I think it did raise a fair amount of money. And part of it is about the body, about, we are whole creatures. So it's good to keep fit and make sure that our bodies are ready to continue to work for what God is calling us to work for. But also, doing this run is a bit of fun, is a joy, is a hopeful thing. But it also enables people to have the conversation, who is CAFOD? What do they do? Why do we support them? And it has enabled me to go on social media, say, on videos, to say, I really support CAFOD because they work for ecological justice, and it's really important for me. So it was a good thing. It was a fun thing. And I will be doing the CAFOD Fun Run in Liverpool in solidarity with you, Mary.
So, called to run in the footsteps of Jesus, bringing joy, hope to those we encounter. And it strikes me also, listening to you, that it's a way of tapping into what is part of the culture now of getting fit, but applying that, not wasting a chance to use the culture that we're in to bring about a better world.
Yeah, that's a very Ignatian thing, isn't it? Finding God in all things, and
Yeah. And doing it all
using all
with joy,
opportunities to
with
spread
joy and
God. Yeah,
hope.
yeah.
That's it. So, Marianne, we're coming to the end of the programme, but I'd just like to thank you for spending time this afternoon and wish you a very blessed Advent, and keep running and keep bringing joy and hope to others by your work. The best of luck as you start at the FCJ Centre in London. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be with you. Mulțumesc.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for watching. And please continue watching Angelus TV this afternoon, as the variety of programmes coming up in Romanian will give you hope and joy. Thank you. Bye.